Welcome to ACC Nation. That's Will. I'm Jim, and the conference wrapped up their final ACC championship this weekend. A few NCAA championships have moved out of the way, and we move on to hopefully grab at least one or two more titles if things work out the way that I think they're going to. We're going to take a look at all of that, and then the field of 64. Which teams are headed to the regionals and want a shot at the College Baseball World Series? Everybody wants to go to Omaha. That's my first on my bucket list. My first place to visit in the world is Omaha. I know that Dave Wolpert, the dude behind the camera who does stuff here at ACC Nation, he really wants to go to Omaha this year. So I don't know what his plans are. I think I mentioned this before, but he had put down on a list that he had sent me, he put down my name along with his as headed to Omaha. So some kind of subtle message there.
You're paying for the trip. That's what it is.
That's the not so subtle message that he was sending. Hey, let's take a look at what happened in sports. We've got a lot of stuff going on. Virginia's Emma Navarro has won the women's tennis singles championship. North Carolina's McKenna Jones and Elizabeth Scotty took the doubles championship to round up the NCAA tennis championship play. A lot of good action there. In men's golf, teams that are advancing, it's Florida State, North Carolina, Wake Forest, Louisville, Clemson, and Georgia Tech. Meanwhile, in the Women's College World Series, Florida State knocked off LSU and UCLA. Unfortunately for Hokies fans, just outlasted Virginia Tech. The Hokies will be taking on the Bruins next, and we hope that they beat them. Thursday, June 3rd is when that game is going to come up at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The game is going to be on ESPN. You don't want to miss that. There's been some excellent softball action so far this season, and I can only think it's going to get so much more intense and much better. NCAA Lacrosse Championship action. Boy, I tell you what, if you're into lacrosse, which I tend to be, this was the perfect weekend for ACC fans. One, because in the Women's Lacrosse Championship, it was all ACC. We've got Boston College, we've got Syracuse. What more could you ask for, right? Well, one of them had to go home. I hate to say it, boo-hoo, but number 4 seed Boston College defeated number 3 seed Syracuse 16-10. Boy, I tell you what, that was unexpected, that score. Congratulations to the Eagles picking up the women's NCAA lacrosse championship.
Yeah. So did you see the season Charlotte North had for them? Set an NCAA record with 102 goals.
Yeah.
I think she had 6 in that championship game. Like, that's just mind-blowing. 102 goals in a season.
It is. It's phenomenal. And that's the best way to describe their season. Phenomenal. In fact, if you've been watching ACC lacrosse at all this season, if you picked up any time watching a game, whether it was men or women, the competition this season has just been off the charts. So it's been great. Now, speaking of men, the men's championship, Virginia handed Lars Tiffany another win as head coach. And, to make it even more special, they decided to hand the loss to a former ACC school. That's right, the Big L.
Big L.
Maryland taking the dive here, 17-16. Man, I tell you what, Virginia, getting there, I was yelling at the screen the other day, watching that game, not the Maryland game, but the one prior to it when they were playing North Carolina. I was yelling at the screen. It was just like, it was the most intense game I think I have ever watched. And I did notice something while I was scrolling through Twitter a little earlier, and I hadn't had much chance to do it, but Charles Snowden had made the comment about the lacrosse game being one of the best that he's seen. And yeah, I mean, that that team has just absolutely wrapped people up and pulled them in, and they've done a phenomenal job of coming up with yet another NCAA title.
Yep, and the trophy stays in Charlottesville for yet another season, and
sounds familiar.
And in true Virginia sports fashion, it has to come down to like the very very end. I mean,
Of course,
it was like Virginia. What was it? They were. I think Virginia was up like a couple of goals. It was like 17-15 with like in the last minute or so, and then they tried to clear a save or whatever, a miss, but then the guy like his pass went too far and it went and Maryland got possession back and ended up scoring with like 10 seconds left. And Maryland ends up winning the face off, get a pretty good shot on goal, but the goalkeeper made it one hell of a save. That is like that was yeah, I don't even know how to describe that save. That's like Sam Cassell doing the onions thing. Gif that's the kind of save it was, and it went out to a Virginia player who just kind of threw it up and towards like the middle of the field, and time ran out, and Virginia won what was just an outstanding game. I mean, Virginia. I feel like every time Virginia would start to pull away, Maryland would creep back in and keep us. So it was, like it was just a well played game. Maryland came into the game undefeated. I think Virginia had 4 losses on the season, but they've played a lot tougher competition. So yeah, it's another championship in the fold for the Hoos, which obviously I love to see, and especially against the team to the north who are traitors to those of us in the ACC. So it couldn't be happier to see them take the big L.
That's right. For those of you who are familiar with Charlottesville in the Albemarle County area, you know where Ruckersville is. It's not in Albemarle, I don't think. I think it's in the next county. But nonetheless, this team, to me, this team is from not Ruckersville, but from Puckersville, because
Puckersville.
yeah, if you're a fan of Virginia men's lacrosse, you were doing some major puckering during this game and the one before that too. In NCAA, yes.
to confirm, Ruckersville is in Greene County, so it is
Green.
not.
I thought it was in the north of there. It's on 29, right?
Yep.
So okay, you had to
anything in and around there is always on right off of 29. So
yeah, otherwise it's just not.
Yeah. Otherwise, this is way out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. We won't get into that part of it. Anyway, in NCAA rowing, in first varsity 8 grand finals, Virginia placed 6th. The Cavaliers placed 5th on the second varsity 8 grand finals. And their highest finish, Virginia taking home 4th in the varsity 4s grand final of the NCAA Championship. A reminder for you that outdoor track and field, it's going through all the qualifications stage now. The championship action is going to be June 9th through the 12th in Eugene, Oregon. Of course, in Eugene. Why? Why would it be in Oregon? Why? What kind of tie? That's right. What kind of tie do they have to
bag alert, major bag alert?
There's some kind of a shoe company that's got some tie with that program. I don't know. Anyway, but they have a great field, a great place for track. It's because it's one of the most spectacular track and field operations that you'll find anywhere. So from that standpoint, it's always worth watching. The final ACC tournament wrapped up Memorial Day weekend. I hope that everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend and enjoyed yourself and remembered those folks who have given of themselves, both in their lives, literally giving their lives, and in other ways in their life giving, so that you can have the freedom to enjoy a Memorial Day weekend and have some time off and spend it hopefully with family. The ACC baseball tournament wrapped up. Duke, surprise here, man, number 9 seed, knocking off number 3 seed NC State. Here's another team from Puckersville. 1-0 It's their first ACC championship since 1961, Will. That's just like amazing. But boy, this team, there's just sort of like this feel, a team of destiny. This team was delivering all the way through this tournament. Incredible play.
Yeah, and when we talked,
You
we were
just kind of,
previewing it last week. I had
yeah, go ahead.
when we talked about it last week, we mentioned all these teams that had been playing really well, including Duke, who had won 8 in a row going into the ACC tournament, and the Pac-9, who had won 24-30 going in. I mean, Virginia was in the semifinals. They had been playing outstanding of late. Blew the doors off of Notre Dame. I think it was something like 17-1. Maybe should have saved a few runs for the next game, guys. Um, but the championship game was just an excellent pitcher's duel. I mean, I think Duke only had like 4 hits in the game, but one of them, but one helped produce 4 hits you know, out of 29 plate appearances, which is, obviously really they did what they kind of did. NC State did. They kind of piggybacked pitchers. They had the starter go 4 2/3, and the reliever go 4 2/3, but still they combined to strike out 12. So no shame in that. That was an excellent pitching performance. Um, but the starter for Duke, Cooper Stinson, hasn't done a lot for them, but was outstanding. 6 innings, shutout ball, giving up 3 hits, strikeout 6. And I know NC State in the ninth inning had the tying run on, and then there's a lot of questions as to whether or not they should have bunted. I believe they got a runner on and they sacrificed the guy to second, but he never made it home. And there's always that question about sacrificing, which is still kind of prevalent in the college game, but not so much in the majors now. I'm kind of anti-sacrifice. I mean, I understand its use, but I'm just not a fan of giving up an out personally. But still, congratulations to Duke. They absolutely deserved it.
We had an interesting conversation regarding sack bunts um, between three of us, and apparently two of you, I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I mean, if that's what a coach wants to do, that's fine. But I definitely see the point that you're bringing up about a sacrifice bunt. In this particular instance, I'm not going to point out what game it was where the sack bunt came into play, but even at that point, I was sort of going, "Why'd you do that?"
Uh-huh.
I don't quite understand why, but I mean, it's a strategy, right? It's just another form of playing chess in sports, and only the coach knows for sure why they did it.
Mhm.
It was effective. It worked. Um, but yeah, I'm like you. I'm sort of thinking, you know, uh, sacrifice bunts to me. I don't know. I mean, you have about, I understand why in the pros, because you get to a point there where good luck in getting that bunt because of the speed. But the same thing's happening now at college. I was looking at all the, listening to all the radar stuff that they were posting of these pitchers. And rarely did you hear of anything that was below 92, 93 miles an hour, unless it was, a slider or a break, some kind of breaking ball of some sort. And there was some awesome pitching in the ACC tournament. I mean, there are some pitchers that are just incredible,
Mhm.
incredible guys.
A lot
Uh,
of outstanding performances in this tournament, that's for sure.
yeah. It was fun. It was very much fun to watch. Kudos to the folks who, the Knights, I believe, Charlotte Knights, with Truist Field. Very nice facility for that level of minor league baseball, and a nice location for people. Uptown Charlotte is a nice area to go into. Lots of things to do. Charlotte is a great city to have sporting events in of this nature, and I enjoy watching it. I'll enjoy it a lot more now that I'm able to go places without having to worry about wearing a mask. So anyway. Teams that are moving on. NC State, Miami, Notre Dame, North Carolina, Florida State, Virginia, and Georgia Tech, and of course Duke. Got to be frustrating as all get out. Will Pitt, who was just like a week or two ago named as one of the potential regional, maybe even a super regional site, right? And pretty much everybody thought, well, Pitt, there's a team that did well at the beginning of the season. There's a team that's been, carrying the water. They've certainly have got to do pretty well in the tournament and get a shot at a regional. But alas, no Pitt.
Yep, got an Alabama team that I think they were 8-17 in top 50 games, where got in ahead of Pitt, who was 17-12, which seems rather ridiculous when you base it on that right there. I mean, you look at it, and obviously Pitt played, when you break it down, Pitt played, more top 50 games than Alabama did, but they didn't get in. You got these guys going, oh, those guys are talking bad about Bama again. So, but yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah, just kind of ridiculous that that Pitt got left out of this tournament when you just break it down like that.
Yeah, it was a shame because they did have a good season, and when I was looking at the list, I was going like, okay, we missed somebody here. We missed somebody. And Wake Forest is another team that, of course, as the season went on, it didn't pan out, but it started out pretty good. And just they just didn't go anywhere with stuff. I don't know what was happening there. Again, one of the shows I'd brought up that I'd read some stuff where people were saying maybe it's time for a change in the coaching staff. So we'll see what happens in the off season if somebody decides to retire or is voluntarily or involuntarily retired, something along those lines. So no easy paths to Omaha, by the way. Let's take a look at the regional matchups. We'll start with the South Bend. You've got these in front of you too, do you not?
I do have the matchups in front of me.
Okay, so I just want to make sure because we're going to bounce back and forth in reading these things. South Bend Regional is going to be hosted by obviously Notre Dame. Who else? They are also the number 1 seed in this. They're going to be taking on number 4 Central Michigan, and number 2 UConn is taking on number 3 Michigan. So I said Central Michigan, and then number 3 Michigan. So Notre Dame, Central Michigan, UConn, Michigan. So I honestly, out of all of those teams, I don't see anybody stopping Notre Dame.
Not at this point. I mean, Notre Dame comes in number 10 overall. Obviously lost in the semifinals to Virginia, but still a 30-11 overall record. Played, really well. I mean, Central Michigan, no slouch either. They won 40 games. Under the MAC, the Chippewas again, and then they'll play in that first game, and then they'll obviously get the winner of Michigan UConn next. If that's assuming Notre Dame wins, but that should be a good matchup right there. A couple of teams that played very well this year too, obviously good enough to get in.
So what's our next regional?
Okay, let's go. We'll go up here to the. I'm going to go to the Gainesville one, where Miami as the number 2 seed against South Alabama. That Miami number 2 seed finishing 32-19 on the season, taking on the Jaguars, I believe they are, of South Alabama. Good season for Miami. Didn't quite work out for them at the ACC tournament. They were a team that got out of the gates pretty well, struggled a little bit in the middle, but then played very well at the end of the season. Again, like I said, finished 32-19 on the season. They are in the same regional as with a couple other Florida schools. They'll They'll play a Florida school whether they win or lose. They're going to take on the number 1 seed in their region, obviously the Florida Gators at 38-20, and South Florida at 28-27. So on paper, it looks like Florida should be the heavy favorite in that matchup. And I say Miami, the 2 seed, probably be a favorite against South Alabama.
Going back to the South Bend Regional, I just want to point something out here because as we're going through, there's some oddities in how things are covered here. And this is going to make it difficult for a lot of people who don't have certain networks on their packages. The Notre Dame and Central Michigan game is going to be on ESPN3, as is the Yukon and Michigan game. But the Gainesville games, do you have that information there in front of you? If you don't, I'll share it.
I do not.
That Miami South Alabama game is going to be on the ACC network. And then the Florida and South Florida game is going to be on the SEC network. So that can create some issues there. Most people, I think, have SEC in depending on how big their cable package is.
Yeah.
That's sort of
in theory, most people should. It's not like the ACC network.
Right.
That's not on Comcast.
It's just not there yet. So that may create
hopefully in due time.
Yeah. And due time came a long time ago. So get on it, Comcast. Come on. Knoxville Regional is going to be hosted by Tennessee. Well, that's where we're going to find number 2, Duke. This ought to be a fun matchup out of the gate. They're going to take on number 3, Liberty. And Liberty is doing pretty well this season. That game will be on the ACC network. And number 1, Tennessee is going to face off with number 4, Wright State. That'll be on ESPN3. So
that one will be actually really a really tough region right there. I mean, Tennessee, obviously the top seed in that region. They're 45-16 overall, but they take on Wright State, which is the highest score. They scored the most runs in the entire country. And then they also have Liberty, who was 19-2 in conference play, and obviously Duke, who won the ACC championship and has won 12 in a row. That regional is good. I would probably say is the toughest one.
I would agree that I think right out front that the Duke Liberty matchup is going to be a tough game, and Tennessee's going to have to find some solid defense to shut down Wright State. Don't go by it's Tennessee versus who?
Right State. Yeah. And you look at some of these like 1 versus 4 matchups, and you're seeing these some teams that are under 500 or barely above 500. Wright State's 35-11 on the season. So that gives you kind of any indication as to how good Wright State is, aside from what I said a moment ago. I mean, they're obviously the top team in terms of scoring runs in the entire country, and are a 4 seed at 35-11 taking on Tennessee. So that, like I said, that's going to be a tough regional right there.
So in the old days, they used to have kids up in the scoreboards moving letters and numbers and all kinds of stuff like that. There are no kids who could have kept up with Wright State this year. So.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm curious to see. I saw the stat that they were the top scoring team. I'm kind of curious while we're talking just how bad it was, like how many runs they might have scored in games this year.
Yeah, well, it's something to look up here, and maybe while we're talking, I don't know. Maybe you can pull that one up.
I'm actually working on it right now.
I kind of figured as much. If you can multitask, tell us about the Nashville Regional that's going to be hosted by Vanderbilt.
All right, I will do that. Nashville. Okay, we've got Vanderbilt. I'm just gonna get it out there right now. I will not be watching any games involving Vanderbilt. I cannot stand
those. The Whistler?
Don't like the Whistler. Don't like the uniforms. Like if they wear like the striped ones, it looks like they're just wearing pajamas. They're going to take on Presbyterian, the Blue Hose. Shouts to the Blue Hose. The number 3 seed, Indiana State Sycamores. taking on Georgia Tech at the number 2 seed at 29-23. So good season for the Yellow Jackets, getting that number 2 seed in that regional. Vandy, the number 4 overall seed in this tournament, obviously going to be one of the heavy favorites in this tournament. But my hope is that one of these other 3 teams is able to knock them out in terms of get them out of this tournament right away. And while we're looking at it, I have pulled up Wright State's schedule for the season, and am seeing, now I have to pull it back up. It's actually moved away. There is a series against Purdue Fort Wayne at the beginning of May. They won games 22-2, 28-7, and 29-6. Then the following weekend beat Milwaukee 24-2 and 20-5.
Yeah.
And then won the championship game 21-3 in the Horizon. Oh, they're in the Horizon League. I miss so, yeah. But yeah, 21. A lot of 20-run outings for them. So be careful of Wright State. But yeah, go Presbyterian, Indiana State, and Georgia Tech.
That's going to be, here's what's going to be interesting. When you have a team that's capable of cranking out a lot of runs like that, and then you put them up against somebody who knows how to you've got a good pitching staff and a good defensive group like Tennessee, it can shut down that score machine pretty quickly, and it takes a lot of air out of a team. We'll see whether Wright State, if their coach says, look, man, you go in, you play your game. If you're not scoring runs, don't worry about it. Just play your game, because, you're facing something different than what you faced all season. This is going to be a tougher task. Doesn't mean that you can't win. But, I would go with that approach and just set expectations, set that bar low, and say, hey, man, if you score 5 runs, that's fantastic. If you score 3 runs, fantastic. As long as that 3 runs is more than what Tennessee scores.
But just to go back to the Vanderbilt thing, if you do want to watch, keep an eye on who I think will probably be their starting pitcher in the first game, Kumar Rocker, who will be one of the top picks in this upcoming draft. Just 135 strikeouts and 91 and a third innings. That's a K9 rate over 13 and a WHIP like below 1. So that's somebody to keep out for. And I know they have another guy, his name escapes me, who's really good on their roster, Jack Leiter, that's his name. I think he's the son of one of the Leiters. I know there's a couple of them, but yeah, they have a couple of really good pitchers, and that's why they are a threat to win it all yet again.
There's a joke in there about who's heavier, such and such.
The Rock is lighter.
He's a little lighter. Yeah. Okay. So Georgia Tech, I think in a good position, at least starting out in that particular region. But man, there's some tough competition. Vanderbilt is definitely somebody that you don't want to mess with. That Georgia Tech Indiana State game, ESPN3, Vanderbilt and Presbyterian on the SEC network. So the next one is the Ruston Regional. That's hosted by Louisiana Tech. Number 2 seed is NC State, and they're taking on number 3 Alabama. That's going to be on ESPN3. And number 1 seed Louisiana Tech takes on number 4 Rider. That game will also be on ESPN3.
Yeah, a big series right here. Pac-9 got a 2 seed coming off their loss in the ACC championship game, which I believe I saw was like their first shutout of the season, and obviously first time they'd been shut out going back 2 seasons, back into 2019. I think the last time they were shut out, but still a great season, sitting at 30-17 overall, taking on Alabama, who who obviously is a team that when you look at their resume doesn't have much, but obviously once you get into the tournament, anything's possible. But on paper, State should be favored to win that first game. And Louisiana Tech, number 16 overall seed, taking on the Brighter Broncos. I believe that is their nickname. I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head, but obviously Louisiana Tech, a team that's had a pretty good baseball program, and they're they're going to be a tough out for sure.
See how that all works out. Up next is where your team gets to play, and that is going to be an interesting pairing.
Yeah, they are. They're going to be in the. It's in South Carolina, the Columbia Regional. Even though South Carolina is the number 2 seed, the number 1 seed in that region is Old Dominion, who I know Virginia was scheduled to face ODU at one point during the season, and that game was canceled, I believe, due to some COVID issues. So it'd be nice to see them get that game, get the rematch there. The number 4 seed in that region is Jacksonville. They are the Dolphins, I believe, 16-32. So a team that's got a 333 winning percentage is in the NCAA tournament, taking on a team that's won 2/3 of their games. You figure ODU should be the heavy favorite in that game, and in Virginia, South Carolina, that should be a good game. Obviously, with the way Virginia has been playing at in the latter part of the season.
Yeah, the pitching staff for
Yeah.
Virginia has just been phenomenal.
And they're gonna bring out Andrew Abbott in game 1,
Yeah.
set the tone right away.
Man, I tell you, he was an absolute pleasure to watch.
Mm-hmm.
The Old Dominion Jacksonville game will be on ESPN3. South Carolina and number 3 Virginia will be on ESPN2. So we've, ratcheted things up here just a little bit from the standpoint of how much attention that game is going to get. That tells you a lot. If you keep an eye on which network it's going to be carried on, it tells you a lot about what the folks behind the scenes are thinking and what kind of audience they will have. Next is Lubbock, and that's where number 2 UCLA takes on number 3 North Carolina, and number 1 Texas Tech faces off with number 4 Army. Texas Tech and North Carolina, to me, those are the 2 teams. So
yeah, I mean, Texas Tech number 8 overall seed coming into the tournament at 36-15. Again, like I said, like Jim said, taking on Army, and in UNC just take it on UCLA. That's going to be a tough matchup for them. UCLA 35-18 overall. And then obviously Carolina just above 500, but as we all know, the ACC has been a much tougher baseball conference this season and has got a lot of quality opponents. So yeah, I think Carolina, if Carolina's going to win or get anywhere out of this tournament, they got to win right away. I think they got to pull off the upset against UCLA and set the tone right away.
I see that happening. I'll go with the Tar Heels on that over the Bruins. I just feel like North Carolina is a better team. That game will be on ESPN3. The Texas Tech and Army game will be on ESPNU. And our final one is what?
We're going down to Ole Miss. Ole Miss hosting another regional there. The ACC team of mention, Florida State, is in as the number 3 seed. They will be taking on Southern Miss in their first game. Ole Miss, the number 1 seed, taking on Southeast Missouri State. No, I do not remember their nickname off the top of my head.
Yeah, and there's
But
usually a reason to.
Hey, one of the things what we used to do when I was younger is I would try to remember, like, memorize every single D1 basketball team's uh, mascot or their nicknames. And obviously, as time's gone on, there's been more teams, and I've got other things going on in my life, and I just don't remember them. But I still remember a lot of these just by looking at them. But anyways, yeah, Florida State, finished the season 30-22. They finished the season pretty well. Of course, Mike Martin Jr. gets them to the NCAA tournament in his first full season as manager of the team. Get a tough matchup against Southern Miss, who was 37-19 overall. But like I say, I think this is a pretty even matchup, and I do think FSU has the ability to win that opening game and maybe get the matchup with Ole Miss in the next game. And do keep in mind, if you aren't familiar with the NCAA baseball tournament, that these first round games these first round regionals are all double elimination.
Right. Good point that you threw that in there. Just to remind folks, when we were kids, a lot of us used to do what you said, memorizing a lot of stats and nicknames and all kinds of stuff like that. But we'll see what happens is you turn 21, and I emphasize you turn 21 because I want to make this just, nice and legal. You turn 21 and you start hanging out in craft breweries, and it's all gone.
Then you start going to Bald Man all the time, and then
that's right.
Then you just try to then it all goes away, right?
It's like in a couple of years somebody will ask you what's the nickname of the of Virginia, and you're going to go and we'll know where you're sitting at the moment that they ask you that question. It may require a few rounds to get there, but it'll happen. So
you lose brain. Uh-oh. Why I laugh.
And then while you're at work the next day, in the middle of a meeting with your boss, that's where you'll stand up and go, woohoo! Just randomly. And that's what happens. So anyway, you can see where that's all headed. Wrong direction. That final regional, Southern Miss, Florida State, I can see Florida State having actually coming down pretty good on that end of things. Ole Miss is going to be a tough competitor, though. That's going to be a tough out. I think that whoever gets Ole Miss, that's going to be a challenge. You got a real fight on your hands there. So I don't think that if I were putting $1 down on that particular regional, I'd have to say who comes out of it in one piece. It's going to be Ole Miss. But I think Florida State, as you kind of point out there, does have an opportunity to come away in good shape. We'll see where they go, because I think that whatever happens in that second game, and it's probably, if they win that first and then they head to meet up with Ole Miss, that's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a real tough challenge. We'll see whether or not the ACC teams are as good as we think they are this season, because quite frankly, we've talked about this. I think that the ACC is loaded this season, pitching wise, batting wise. And I can't help but think that this might be a good shot at winning a national title again this season. We'll see which one of these teams can do it, though.
Yeah, with all the teams that are in it, there's definitely chances. I mean, there's only one seed, but that these two seeds are playing. Have an opportunity to, and the 3 seeds obviously all have a good chance of getting out of their regions as long as everything goes right.
Want more ACC sports news and interviews? Make ACCNation.net your homepage or follow us on Google News. Be sure to subscribe to ACC Nation on your favorite podcast or streaming radio platform. While you're there, we'd appreciate a rating and your support through PayPal. Follow us on social media at ACC Nation. And you'll find Will on Twitter at Will's World MN, and I'm at ACC The Q. Until next time, cheers.
Score.